Hey everyone, welcome to today's Processes Made Simple call. It is March, and that means we're kicking off a new theme. For the month of March, our theme is team structure. Today we're going to be specifically talking about a much debated topic among property management companies, and that's pods versus departments. We'll be talking about a lot of other things too as well, I'm sure, because we're very excited to have our special guest, Kelly Coffman of Renters Warehouse, with us today. She's going to be sharing her insights and wisdom, golden nuggets that she's been gathering for her career. And I'm going to turn it over to Ben. As always, we'll have some a time for Q&A at the end, but feel free to drop your questions in the chat as well.
All right, let's do it. Chris, thank you for the intro. Kelly, thrilled to have you here. I thought it would be fun to start things off. I was trying to recall when you and I met, Kelly, because I know it was back in my days at Lead Simple, so at least 5+ years ago. But I'm curious to hear from your side of the equation a little bit about what your company looked like before incorporating Lead Simple as a software to bring about organization and clarity in the team.
Sure. So we actually brought y'all on to help us set up Lead Simple for operations. We had been using it for sales for a couple years for our sales CRM. We brought it over for developing our operations side in 2019. So really early in the year 2019, I feel like we pretty much spent the entire year meeting weekly.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And back in 2019, we had actually just started changing into squads. You say pods, I'm going to call them squads. It's
That works.
just different terminology. But we had just formed the squads in 2019. So Lead Simple was really pivotal in helping us move from having everything in departments where you have one or two people that know their checklist and their thing that they need to do every day, week, and month within the department, and then putting those checklists into Lead Simple processes so that the squads could then take over aspects of those processes, if that makes sense. So,
yeah.
Lead Simple has been a huge help for our business.
Yeah, it definitely is a very far-reaching software in terms of its impact. One of the things that I find really interesting is how much it changes the company culturally. And I think this is really true of any process or project management software that you get serious about, is that it really does promote a different type of culture in the business. It's creating that higher accountability, higher visibility, and really just opportunity, I think, for issues to surface more easily than they would otherwise. So yeah, love that. Okay, you need to tell us a little bit about you, Kelly. How did you enter the property management business? What kind of brought you into this space?
So many people that I've talked to throughout the years, this was not something I ever planned on doing. I actually majored in art history from art college here in Richmond, Virginia. Yeah. And at the time I was working for an investment company. So they bought, flipped and sold houses. It was a home investors franchise. And I was with them for a really long time. And then two of the partners of that company partnered with another person, a third person, and they purchased a Renters Warehouse franchise. So we were all under the same roof. We were all already working together. I came over to assist temporarily. And then I got sucked into it. And the first year or so was brutal. I was basically handling maintenance. And anyone that does maintenance for a long period of time, God bless, because burnout is real and it's fast in that section of the business. But through the years, I went from maintenance / Jane of all trades to overseeing different departments as we were building them. And I've just been really lucky to have been able to partner with Wes, who's our main broker in the business. And I've been able to build a lot of it out with him. Like even though we're a franchise and usually there's this blueprint that comes with franchises, we've had a lot of flexibility in being able to build out the processes, policies, like kind of everything that we do from scratch. And I've been able to do that. So now I am the director of operations, which is great. I really like this seat. I get to geek out on processes, policies, best practices, efficiency, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, being in that seat to really officially start pulling the levers to help optimize the company is really cool.
Yes, and it's great seeing it like actually come to fruition and seeing, especially our team, being able to see their workloads lightened and see them enjoy their work more and not be stressed out every morning when they're coming to work. That's one of the best payoffs from what I do.
Yeah. Okay. Let's dive into really our topic for the day. And just to define terms a little bit, I'd love it, Kelly, maybe if you could tell us what your perspective is on what a departmental property management business looks like versus a squad or pod PM business.
Sure. So we kind of actually progressed into departmental in our early years. And to us, we had our broker, Wes, that was pretty much overseeing the entire PM operations. He was pretty much the one that was helping us make sure that we were meeting all of our deadlines and things like that until I stepped more into that role. But then the departments were like maintenance and renewals. And I think the only thing we had a team for at the time was leasing. We did have leasing agents at the time, but every other part of the business, any kind of process queue, like delinquencies, that kind of thing, was in a department. And we didn't have too many resources at the time, too many employees. There could be like a half of a resource to 2 full-time resources in each department, depending on what it was.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
For squads are almost like, so for us, we have 2 squads, and the properties are evenly split between those 2 squads. And they each have their own portfolio of properties, but there's this ladder of teammates that we have in each one. So for us, our squad, and you'll see different philosophies on this, but our squad we have a customer support specialist that's answering like basic questions. They're kind of front lines for our phone calls, any incoming communications. Their job is to get to stuff quickly and try to resolve it, but if they can't, then to escalate it. And then we have a property associate that oversees them. They're more of our owner's point of contacts. And then above that, we have a property management executive. And in our business, that's Ron. That's actually my husband. And he oversees both of the squads. And he's the one making sure that we're hitting KPIs, that if there's anything weird or escalated, he's making sure that it gets handled legally and compliance and within our processes and things like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think to make a little bit of a differentiation here, one of the other common methods that I've observed in the property management organizational structure is portfolios. And I think there really is a difference between portfolios and pods. And just to elaborate on that, the key differences that I've observed is in the pod structure, you have really a team, right? And that team is responsible for everything related to that particular pod or group of properties which they are responsible for. In a portfolio method, you really have one person who's responsible for everything, and they often filter tasks out to other people in the organization who aren't necessarily affiliated with a specific portfolio. On that departmental side, obviously, it's just here's our operations department, and then here's our subgroups from that, maintenance, leasing, etc. So it really is, I think it can be a very impactful thing to think through, because for many companies, really just any entrepreneurs, right? Any business that begins is going to encounter this problem of organization. And usually, if you think about the entrepreneurial path, you start with the solo provider, the jack of all trades who does all the things. And then there's that moment of, oh crap, I can't do all the things. I need to bring someone in. And usually that looks like a very pod style of relationship almost, where you have kind of person A, person B, they're a team, they work together and they do everything. But as soon as the company starts growing to anywhere beyond that level where you're starting to have 3 or maybe 4 people, I think this discussion becomes super duper relevant. So I'd be curious to learn a little bit more, Kelly, about your transition away from departments toward pods. Could you tell me a little bit about the problems that you were experiencing when you were in the departmental structure, and kind of what caused you or motivated you to make the change, and what was, I know I'm asking lots of questions here, but what was it about pods or squads that seemed really attractive and helpful and be an improvement?
Yeah, so two different things happened. We got big. So we went from 89 doors in 2015 to right around 500 in 2019. So
Wow,
being able to handle that volume, we grew really fast.
that's huge.
Being able to handle that volume, that was just adding so much stress within the departments. And then really one thing that you'll probably hear me say a lot is communication. We were just having so many complaints from owners about communication, and things didn't flow in a way that made sense. Like, you would call and speak to somebody about a maintenance thing and then say, hey, on this other property, this guy isn't paying rent. Can you tell me what's going on with that? Maintenance guy can't talk about delinquencies. And so they don't know anything about the delinquency process. They can't even speak to the process. So we had owners that were like, I don't know who to call for what. I'm getting transferred all around. This person only knows a little bit about my property. Like, just want to talk to somebody who knows what's going on with my property. So that was a huge thing. And we're always trying to elevate the service that we provide to our owners, like always. And if you hear a complaint a few times and it's just not going away, then that's an indicator that you got to look at the nuts and bolts of your business and see what you can do to address it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was doing some research actually related to this issue recently, and there's a stat, if I believe this is correct, so someone should research this to make sure I'm actually remembering this correctly. But if I recall correctly, the stat is that when someone calls in for any type of customer service interaction, whether it is property management or otherwise, 80% of people who make that call expect that whoever answers the line is going to know exactly what their problem is and how to solve it. And I think it makes a lot of sense, this idea of the pod structure, where you have a closed loop of people who understand what's going on at this particular property, and making that direct connection between the tenant, the owner, and that pod, where there really is complete ownership over that particular responsibility. So yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about the transition. So we've heard some of the pain, right? The communication was dropping, owners are giving you poor feedback. What caused you to think, okay, pods is where we need to go? And then what did that transition look like?
In 2019, we were spending a lot of time with Australians. That was
Tell me more.
Australians. I don't know if anybody has heard of Inspired Growth Training, Dennis Youssef and Darren Hunter and Michael Sands, but property management is a huge industry in Australia, and it's pretty much the flip-flop of the stats that we have here in the US, where here in the US, the majority of single-family rentals are self-managed and not professionally managed. In Australia, because of legislation and all these things that they've got going on, the majority of their single family rentals are actually professionally managed and not self-managed. So it's one of those industries where they've figured it out, and they've been through this, and these guys were the experts. We partnered with a couple other franchises here in Virginia and brought them in and had training with them. And I don't think that it was their organization. I'm not exactly sure how we got these books, but there's books called Building Blocks. And if y'all remind me, I can send you information on those if you want to send it out in a newsletter or whatever.
Yeah.
But that really outlined, that was the inspiration for how we structured our squads and our squads. We hadn't really talked to any other property management companies at the time that were structured like this. I think there was one other Renters Warehouse franchise that we spoke to get their feedback on it back at the time. But basically, the books, they were specific to Australia. So there was things there that we don't do here and vice versa. But they very clearly outlined, it's a triangle where you've got at the bottom that customer service level, like they're handling a bunch of, we call it level 1 basic tasks and incoming phone calls and things like that. And then the next block is like a property associate, and the next block is that the property management executive. But it outlined like all of their responsibilities, KPIs, a competency chart. Like, here's what they need to be competent in to
Mm-hmm.
be able to elevate to the next level. Yeah, that's a lot of it. And then we had a lot of whiteboard brainstorming sessions where we were like, okay, that works for them, but I don't think these pieces aren't going to work for our business, how it's structured now, and based on where we want to go. So we Frankensteined it a little bit to what works for us. And then through the years, we've tried a lot of different things. We went from 2 squads down to 4, where they had a max of 100 properties per squad, and then that was just spread too thin. So we have done a really good job, I think, of teaching our team that we need to be adaptable and things are going to change, and that might mean a restructure. But we also get team buy-in, which I think is super important, especially from your key players, where we're like, hey, you've researched this, we've done some brainstorming, this is what we have sketched out on paper, let's talk you through it. And then those people that are like actually doing the work and in the day-to-day, they're really quick to be able to say, like, yeah, that sounds good on paper, but in real life, that's not gonna work. Or let's do it like this instead. And having their buy-in helps so much.
Yeah, team buy-in is such a big deal, and that's not necessarily the topic for this conversation, but we should talk about it anyway because it's important. I think as we just consider again, kind of the broader entrepreneurial journey, it's chaotic. It is unplannable, right? There's so many ups and downs that there's not really a clear right answer. At least this is my experience, and I imagine for many of the folks on this call too, that you never really know what the right answer is. So the reality is that you have to try things out and see what works and see what doesn't. And that means that your team isn't always going to have this extremely stable day to day, or things are going to change. And I don't know how many people here have ever worked at a larger company, like a Fortune 500 company, but I have, and it's very structured, and you know exactly what to do. We're in the process of some hiring right now, and one of the folks that we're hiring is an ex-Amazon employee. And one of her comments was just about how much data is gathered on a day-to-day basis. And working for a larger company, there's all of these different pieces of infrastructure that are in place. And I think as smaller businesses, we can look at that and be like, wow, that's unreachable or not possible for us to do. And that likely could be true in many places. But we're getting to this point now where technology is making it so much cheaper and easier for us to actually get some of that data and have some of that feedback in a really easy and economical kind of way. I'm curious, just to keep riffing on this for a minute, Kelly, thinking about team buy-in, what are some ways that you have, beyond being careful about who you hire, what are some ways that you have tried to promote a culture for your team where they welcome change? And it's not necessarily, we're just waiting for things to change because we love things to be different, but rather being open to change.
So one of our core values is adaptability, and we have an inspector gadget, little picture next to it, just to illustrate that. But it's something that we talk about regularly. I think that's leadership is something that I've been a self-trained student in since 2016 when I hired my first direct report. And I feel like I still have no idea what I'm doing, but I just got off track with what I was saying. But back to the values. But one thing that I hear and read constantly is you've got to just keep talking about the things that are important. You can't just say it once or twice or 3 times and think that's going to stick and people are going to remember it forever, but you have to continuously say it. So that's something that we really try to do, is stress the things that are important to us and our vision for the company. And then honestly, another thing that helped is most of our employees have been with us since 2020. And if anybody here was around during the year of the pandemic and all the legal changes, if they weren't already adaptable, they had to be. And I think a lot of that was enforced, but we did make a lot of changes to how we did processes and things like that at the same time. And I think, again, that team that's been with us, especially since that time, has seen that changes that we have made have benefited the team in some way, whether it's directly like Lead Simple or whether it's indirectly like happier clients. So they're not feeling as many angry calls and stressed out all the time. So maybe some of that is track record. Just hopefully we've built trust with our team too. And
Yeah.
also if something is broken, we will move away from it because there's no sense beating a dead horse.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's return the conversation back to company structure here. There are many people in this conversation who are absolutely diehard. You must do departments, or you must do pods or squads, or you must do X, Y, and Z. I'm curious, do you fall in either one of those camps? And if not, why? If so, why?
I think you could ask 20 different property managers how they're set up, and all of them will have a different answer. I don't think there is a right answer, and I don't necessarily fall into one or the other. I think it's totally dependent on where your company is in their evolution, how big you are, what your goals are for the product that you're delivering to your clients. I think both are scalable, and there's definitely pros to a lot of them. For us, we found that the issues that we were having in departmental were solved by, we're actually a hybrid, if you want me to go into that.
Yeah, tell us about it.
So we try to move everything into the squad. So all of the in-lease processes like renewals and compliance and delinquencies and all of that, but also we try to bring leasing and maintenance into the squads. And for us, we've been around 400 doors for the last probably a year and a half. And for us, it just doesn't work to have leasing and maintenance within the squads. Those are two highly specific areas of the business that we found that having one or two people in those processes, and that's all they do, and they're the expert and they know when to escalate things to the squad to get the squad involved, that works for us. And so the squads handle everything from when the tenant moves in to when the tenant moves out. And then if we're re-renting it, it'll go temporarily to leasing, and the owner will speak to David, our leasing department associate. And then if they have maintenance throughout the lease, then they'll speak with Alex, who's our maintenance coordinator. But that's what we found to work really well for us.
Yeah, so it sounds like your squads are almost acting as the primary communicators and customer service side of the business, whereas the maintenance comes in on an as needed basis. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the problems that were being solved. You mentioned in passing that making that change from departments to pods solved a lot of the problems that you were experiencing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Again, like we didn't have teams in these departments. There might have been 2 people or 1.5 people that were, when I say half, it just means that not all of their hours each day were allocated to that department. So one of the things was like if we had one maintenance coordinator, that maintenance coordinator is the only person that knows what's going on in maintenance. If somebody's on the phone with an owner about something else and they're like, hey, I got this maintenance request, that one person is the only person that can speak to it. If they're out or sick or quit, then that entire, like all of that knowledge is housed within that one person. And it was really risky. So that was one thing, is just like the silos of information. I know that comes up a lot as an issue for departments. I think another thing was there was a lot of confusion internally about whose responsibility it was to do certain things. So the email came through that wasn't specifically like very clearly a delinquency question or something like that. Like who's supposed to answer that? And then we didn't really have like an escalation path that was clear. So that person that took that couldn't answer it. It was just going off into the void pretty much. Yeah, information didn't flow well for us. And I'm sure if we had committed to the departmental style, we could have found ways to have the information more readily available or whatever. It wasn't a model that we wanted to stick with ultimately.
Yeah, you can definitely be successful in both spaces. And as mentioned, there are definitely diehards on both sides of the coin who will only go one way or another. But I would have to agree with you, Kelly. I think a lot of it depends on the goals of the business, and much of it really does depend on size. I think, in my limited experience opinion, that departmental often makes sense at the early stages of the business and then the much later stages of the business when you're either very, very small or very large. And when you're in that middle space of, let's call it 200 to maybe 600, 650, having the structure of pods really helps significantly because you can't, as a company, say, all right, we are forming a customer service department, and here are 5 people who are all customer service. And then we also have our maintenance team. It's just like there's a logistical reality of you can't put that kind of resource into building that type of department. It might be really helpful to have it, but it's just not reality at that scale. And I think you just have to temper your expectations a little bit to keep the company working the way it ought to.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, so what if you had to go through this process, this transition from apartments to pods again? What are some things that would stick out to you as I do that differently?
Mm, I don't know. Every time that we have adjusted our organizational structure, it's been something that has worked well for us in that moment. So I think, I don't know, I think just us having a plan and thinking through like, each section of the business and how it was going to work in that new plan. And then again, as soon as we realized something wasn't working, I would have pretty much like a all hands on deck brainstorming, like, hey, how do we fix this? We need to fix this now. And we've tried so many things throughout the years. Like you threw something at me, I could tell you if we tried it. We've done call centers for incoming calls. We hired somebody to be a client relations advocate where they were responsible for making sure that people basically were happy interacting with us. We have done all kinds of different things throughout the years, and I think right now I'm really happy with how we're set up right now. I think it works the best for the size that we are, and if we grow, it'll be easy to expand into another squad, and it's totally scalable. So I don't know that there's really anything that we would do differently. There's just so much trial and error.
Yep.
It's just seeing what works and knowing when to hang out and test it out a little bit longer and know when to pivot.
Yeah. Here's another kind of related question. And this is really for some of the PMs who are here on this call, what are some indicators that you would be watching for, say, maybe we should consider restructuring?
Yeah. For us, it was complaints. And I know I've already touched on this before, but when we heard similar complaints, I don't know who to call. Nobody knows what's going on my property. I've called 10 times and I'm not getting a call back. Like, that's also one of the reasons that people quit other property management companies to come to us is because that property manager didn't answer the phone. And I know that's something that everybody here has probably heard before. It's like, oh, property manager never answered the phone, so I need to find somebody else that'll do better. It's like the lowest hurdle, like just pick up the phone, just answer the phone. But that was 4 years into this, and we were becoming that landlord or that property management company, and hearing that complaint, God, that was a horrible complaint to hear when we tried to push customer service so hard. And so for us, it was like we're doing all of these things to try to be the best property management company in the area, and we're still hearing these complaints that we never want to hear. So like something's broken. For us, it's always the catalyst is always either employee workload is not manageable, then to us that's a clear indicator something's broken. And then if we get repeated complaints about something from our clients.
Yeah, makes sense. I think there's 2 ways to go about solving the problem here, and they're drastic. I think it's an appropriate way to think about solving the problem. When you're getting to these types of issues, you either have to stifle growth and say, we are okay with being smaller than we currently are because we're not being able to deliver on the service promise that we have to our clients. Or B, we have to get really systematic and documented and structured so that we can get past this growth point. Because the growth doesn't happen in a healthy way unless there is a very clear path to success for how you take care of your clients. And I've heard many phrases for that. The one I like the best is the proven process. And just having clearly defined processes, policies, values, mission, all of these different pieces of what makes up a healthy business. These things need to be defined, and you can really brute force your way along to a certain level. But when you get there, like I said, you have to either be okay with staying small and being hyper customized and providing a super high level customer service, customer centric type of service. And that's a great spot to be, really in that boutique space. But if you intend to grow and be serious and build a larger company, not that you can't be serious at a smaller level, I'm not saying that, but if you want to do that growth trajectory, then it really behooves you to get serious about documentation.
Yeah, and I think that the industry is headed in a direction where we can do both. We can have this highly systematized business where you've got the automations, we've got all the things in place, and we're growing, but also still be able to deliver customized experience to some extent. So one of the things that we do is, like, this isn't anything earth-shattering, but some of our owners, they can pay extra to have a different maintenance experience where we bring them into the maintenance requests and things like that. But it's very easy for us. We've made that scalable because people can opt in and opt out. So it's like a yes or no, they have this. And I think that we're going to find more ways to do that in the industry, to be able to customize our owner clients packages, I guess. I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but with all of the technology that we have, and then bringing AI into the fold, I don't see why we can't be both highly systematized and customizable in a way that makes our clients happy.
Yeah, there's definitely still a lot of expectation around highly customized service, I would say, based on, particularly from the, I'm blanking out of the name of the study, but the one that Lead Simple and Peter Lohman did here. The PMOps. It was very interesting to hear the details of that, because there's definitely an expectation of very high level intensive customer service, very relational, very asset manager type of relationship, which I think is good, right? That just embeds the need and the desire of the clientele for that type of relationship, which means the need for property management isn't going anywhere, right? People still want to talk with people. Surprise. But you're right. Technology can be used to accessorize and elevate the experience in a lot of different ways, so that not just you're talking to an AI, because that's not necessarily the best outcome, but the AI can do the very low brain activity tasks or the really simple tasks, so that you can have that asset manager type of relationship with your clients. I think that's really how we should look at it, as something to elevate the experience, not necessarily by replacing you and taking away the human interaction, but just taking away the things where you don't have to have human interactions. We don't need to enter data in a spreadsheet manually. An AI could do that for you. Heck, you don't even need an AI to do that. You can do that with Zapier and a couple other, simple things. Speaking of AI, I know that was one of the questions that we had here, and you had mentioned that you guys are looking at Boom, if I recall correctly.
Super.
I'm sorry, Super. Tell us a little bit about Super and what you guys are hoping to accomplish there.
So we heard about Super, oh gosh, it was Better Who have the recording or have the webinar recently.
May have been, yeah, that sounds right.
I'm blanking on it, but it was all about AI, and Super was on there as a speaker representative from their company, and they were talking about all the ways that we can use AI as a tool, not just in a chat GPT way where you're writing prompts or saying, hey, can you make this email sound better, but actually interacting with people in real time. And the way that we are planning on using it initially is to handle our leasing line. So I'm still learning a lot about the capabilities, and honestly, it's probably something I'll always be a step behind on, because I think the general nature of AI is that it just keeps improving and getting better based on the information you're feeding it. But right now we have a phone number that goes to a call center for leasing. And that call center literally has a script, and then they have each property's information. So if somebody calls them and says, hey, how much is the rent at 12334 Main Street? They have that information right there. Instead of having a call center, we're going to send that same information to Super, and their AI bot, or whatever the technological the tech speak for it is, we'll be able to have a real-time conversation with somebody. And so if someone's like, hey, I just drove by this house on this street and I want to see how much the rent is, they can answer that based on the information we put into the system. And one of the really cool things are, this is a 24/7 line. It will never be busy. They will never have somebody on hold. People will get consistent responses. We don't have to worry about like training anybody. We're literally just dumping this information into it, and it's looking at that information and able to help people very quickly. And it'll send like a transcript of everything that they talked about, but it'll also suggest next action steps. So if there's like certain things we're not going to want it to talk about, like housing related, or if somebody asks about our ESA policy or Section 8, those are things that we might want someone in the team to handle. So it'll take those and it'll say, here's what we talked about, here's where we left the conversation, and here's next steps. And then our team can hop on when they get that message and handle it from there. So I'm really excited about it. I think we're rolling that. We're actually trying to schedule our implementation meeting with them right now. So it's very fresh.
Awesome. All right. Love it.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts on company structure that you would like any person who attends this to walk away with?
I think one of the other things that really helped us out was RTM. Don't be afraid to hire outside the country. If anybody is snoozing on that, right now we have, I think, 7 RTMs. So they make up the majority of our business now. We have 6 people that are here in the US, and everybody else is outside of the US. And they're running so maintenance is run by RTM, leasing is run by 2 RTMs. We've got them running our squads. It's really, they're amazing. They've been probably one of the best things that we've done for our business.
Love it. All right.
I don't know.
Well,
is there anything else that you were dying for me to touch on?
No, that was great. I definitely enjoyed the conversation here, Kelly. I think we'll go ahead and bring things to a close for today with a little bit of Q&A. So open things up in the chat, guys. Feel free to hop in the chat and ask any questions that you'd like to have Kelly or myself answer. We'll warm things up a little bit while we're seeing if we have any questions come through. Here's kind of a starter question for a team that's currently structured as pods, but they're seeing inconsistent service across the various pods. How would you solve that problem? What would you do to create consistent service experiences across pods?
Yeah, that's a good one. KPIs are probably going to be one of the best things you can do, is initiate those and have the team report to you on those regularly. Another thing that we have done, we use Help Scout as our shared inbox for the team, and it's kind of ticketing service. And so each ticket that comes in, the team knows how to handle at this point. But when we first brought that on, again, we were having all these complaints about communication. We tackled that. Sometimes we were meeting every single day with like stats on how many open tickets there were, how old they were, why are they sitting, let's talk through this. Eventually, after we literally brought every single person in the company in to tackle those. Like there was something that was open for longer than a day. Like we didn't care who answered it at that point. It just, you have to get it resolved. Really finding the areas that are the lower quality or lower in quality than what you're looking for, and really tackling those and being transparent with your team. We got to a point where with those, between the 2 squads, it became kind of friendly competition. So every Monday during our team meeting, we were reporting on, it was just really easy. It was like, green squad has this many open tickets, orange squad has this many open tickets. And then the person that was manning that slide in our team meeting would have this cute little stuff or whatever. and it just became kind of friendly competition. But another thing, if you don't have a shared inbox or some way to see these communications that are going out, I would really encourage you to find a way to get transparency into the communications. And that's something that higher level management, there's a couple of us that will just go through at random and just pick 5 or 6 messages and see like that email chain look like. And most of the time they're good, but fairly often you'll find some opportunity for coaching on like, ooh, maybe you shouldn't have said it like that, or maybe there's a better way to do it, and coaching like that. So really any kind of measurable statistic is really the best thing, because it's clear to define and anybody can go in and see it. Like for us, how long a ticket has been open or what our average time to respond to tickets is, something that we can quickly get. And that's something that's important to us to measure.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Creating a lot of clear and easy data access so that accountability gets boosted and elevated. Love it. All right. Looks like no questions from the crowd today. So
we did have one question earlier. When you were
sure.
talking about, you had mentioned inspired growth training in a book that you had read. Someone wanted to know the name of that book.
Yes, and I will look it up. I think it was from a company that was LPMA, and I cannot remember what that stands for, but I do have it. I'll dig through my Google Drive and send that to you guys, or I can put it on the Facebook page.
Thank you. That'd be good.
All right, well, Kelly, it's been a pleasure having you on today. Thanks for being willing to join us and tickle our ears, tell us more about the business. I really appreciate you being here.